Hi guys, welcome to the Fashionpreneur Talk with Gitana Styling podcast. If you don't know me, my name is Sandra. I'm a fashion stylist, a podcaster, and a business consultant. And this podcast is about having genuine conversations about fashion entrepreneurship and getting your questions answered. So if you have any questions at all, please email me at info@gitanastyling.com. Gitana is Gitana styling.com. I will leave a link below for you anyways, okay? Now, I want to invite you to join us inside our free Facebook group, Fashion Entrepreneur Club Hangout. In there, I answer questions, I share resources, I host events. So if you're interested, I'll leave a link also for you. Last but not least, I have a free resource for you that it's great if you're just starting your business and you don't know, the steps to follow and put together a plan, or maybe you have been in business for a while but it's not really working well, it's not really working as you expected. Then these guides are for you. They're completely free. I'm going to leave a link below. It's just 3 guides that you get via email, and I walk you through the process so you can create that plan that really works for you and your business. Okay, so without further ado, let's just get started with the podcast. Hey guys, welcome to this episode. I have an amazing guest here with me today. I cannot wait to start chatting with her and sharing everything with you. Her name is Meredith Noles, and she is the founder of Noles Studio. It's a knitwear consultancy that partners with fashion brands for design and develop elevated, sustainable collections, okay? Drawing from her experience at luxury houses and years of guiding independent labels, she bridges creative vision with technical rigor to help brands scale with confidence. Her approach is rooted in craft, in clarity, and storytelling, helping designers build ethical collections with confidence. Meredith, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
No, I'm so happy to have you here. You have a particular focus that we're going to chat on about today that I'm excited to share with everyone. Thank you so much for being here. So I just want people to know a little bit more about you and your background. Why don't you tell them a little bit more about that?
Sure. Well, I'm Meredith Noles, like you said. I'm the founder of Noles Studio. I currently work in the knitwear space and have for many years, but I fell into craft and kind of conscious design because I am from Texas. And I went and worked in a boot and saddle repair shop when I was young. And that just really showed me how there can be a convergence of long-standing traditional practices, like how the leather is tooled and how these boots are constructed. And then because they're made with so much intention and so much quality initially, then they can be repaired and live a really long life. So that prompted me to actually move to Florence, Italy, where I fell into fashion design and had a really amazing experience doing hand painted textiles for a textile designer who worked with Gucci and Ferragamo. And that just really bolstered, again, this idea of craft, and that luxury to me is by hand or has that really human, really organic element. And I just carried that with me and eventually made my way to Parsons, where I studied fashion design, but I did not study knitwear. That actually happened whenever I joined the workforce and was just trying so hard to find a job, and got a great job. Well, it was actually an internship outside of school where it was doing knitwear for kind of the elevated and runway line for a fashion brand. And I realized that there's so much space to explore. When you're in knitwear, you're creating a fabric and a silhouette at the same time. And I realized that there's so many levers to pull. So you're creating everything in one integral step, where someone who works in wovens is sourcing a fabric, maybe dyeing that fabric, and then cutting and sewing a garment. Those are their steps to think through. I, on the other hand, am of course thinking about like the farmers that are making the wool and where that's coming from and how ethical is that supply chain, but then going all the way into the size of the wool, the tension of the stitch, the type of stitch, the artwork, the color, the hand feel, the tension. And that's before I've even gotten to the silhouette of the garment. So I realized that knitwear was a really great place for me to use my skill set where I am very creative, but I'm also really strategic. Um, so yeah, that's a little bit about my journey.
That's awesome. Now I can understand because I've seen you say in a bunch of different places, like, you're handing, you want to create heirlooms, right? That you
Yeah.
can pass on. And I can see that coming from that background from Texas with the boots. The boots,
Yeah.
they last forever if they're, like, and the craftsmanship and everything. I lived in Arizona for a little while, so I got to experience that over there.
Yeah.
And now I'm here in Florida. So I wanted to know a little bit more about that. Why the knitwear? What are the things, I mean, you already mentioned some from your point of view, but what are the things that designers should focus on when creating a particular knitwear piece or perhaps a collection of knitwear pieces?
Yeah. A thing that happens very frequently is brands will come to me after they've launched knitwear, and for whatever reason, it's flopping and it's just a real dumpster fire. And so these are kind of some pain points that I've identified that all of them are experiencing. So
Okay.
I would say that fibers, considering fiber is paramount. So if it doesn't feel good on your skin, someone's probably not going to want to spend money on it, and they're certainly not going to want to keep it in their closet for years. So if it doesn't feel good,
Mhm.
it's probably not worth it. And then also considering fit, if you look at a sweater and it looks beautiful, but then you pull it on and like the neck feels too tight, or it's too high in the armhole or something, and you're just uncomfortable where you're thinking about wearing the garment, then there's definitely some fit focus that should happen. So I think that fibers and fit are really, really baseline.
Yeah.
But then beyond that, I think considering the right factory and manufacturing partner.
Okay.
So there's so many things that go into finding the right factory for you, but a few basic ones are MOQ. So like what's the minimum order quantity? Perhaps their pricing looks really great for your, you know, um, smaller brand or medium-sized brand, but then you realize that you have to order thousands of units and then the pricing is no longer aligned. So that's a big one. And then also just finding factories that, to me, everything's about relationships and everything is about collaborating. Like, I have skills as a designer. The founders of these brands have really distinct points of view, and the manufacturers like have amazing production capabilities, but you need to find the right fit for you. And I think that a lot of brands, um, that are in that kind of like medium size to smaller think that the factory itself is going to be able to translate your design, but that's actually not their strength. They are there in your process to create your product. And so a lot of brands kind of think that
Yeah.
they don't want someone to bridge that gap,
Yeah.
but quickly they find that they've spent a lot of money, and the margins that they thought they were going to get, they're no longer going to get because they've spent so much in development where they really just needed to bring in an additional partner
Yeah.
and almost do investment up front to streamline their process and to create designs that require less samples, and also like less emotional strain. I think that a lot of brands get really, and founders get really drained whenever their idea that's such an amazing idea just can't seem to work.
Yeah.
And it's not even always the factory's fault. Sometimes they just need
Yeah.
specific knitwear language, which is its own language, to make something work.
Yeah, totally. I feel like that is something, I worked in a fashion incubator in Arizona for a while, and I was in constant contact with a lot of just emerging designers, people
Uh-huh.
who were very, very talented and very creative, but they perhaps they lack they never went to school or they never had proper training, and they needed that partner that to bridge that gap, because in the incubator we can create pieces for them but we needed, the perfect, the tech pack and all these different elements that, people perhaps they're not aware of it, or they don't want to invest the money because they don't have the money at that moment. But it's so key to really have someone in there to bridge that gap, because if not, you're not going to end up being profitable. The piece is not going to come out the way that you desire. And I think for all pieces, fit is very important. But for these ones in particular, it is like, how many pieces are out there that we just buy because of how it looks, and then we just don't wear them, and it's just such a shame because they lack this part of the puzzle. So I had another question, but I think this one connects more with what we're talking about. For those people who perhaps are very creative, they're very, they're so excited, they want to, put their collections out there or create a brand around knitwear, but they're missing that technical skills aspect. What do you recommend? Should they go to someone like you? Like, what is the path for them?
Yeah, I mean, definitely it's also not just emerging brands. Like this happens at medium and large brands
Yeah.
too. They can lose their way, or they realize that they need an additional like, person in their corner. So I also just want to say to the smaller brands, like don't beat yourself up. This happens.
Oh,
This
no,
is
of
it's
course not. We're just
it is a knitwear is a niche space, and a lot of people think it's a little more simplistic than it is. So,
yeah.
um, but for those brands and founders that are really creative, like that's one of my favorite things is whenever someone comes to me, they have a really amazing idea, um, but they just have either tried making it happen or don't even know where to start. And that's where I can really partner with them or someone like me,
Yeah.
Basically, I will take the creative vision that they have and then almost put it through like a technical funnel to
Yeah.
see what parts are actually possible.
Yeah.
So, can I give you an example from one of my
Of
clients?
course. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So I work with this brand called Mirth, and they do a lot of really amazing like hand block prints. They're really known for bold patterns on their wovens collection. And then they tried to do knitwear, and there were just a bunch of challenges that they were facing. And whenever I initially came on, I audited their brand and realized that there was no pattern in their knitwear collection, only in their wovens, which of course felt like a little bit of a loss because that's part of their brand identity. So when I dug a little deeper, I realized that they had tried, but nothing had worked out. So then I was able to ask what they had tried and how it failed, and then take that information and basically I translated some of their really beautiful block prints, which are hand block printed in India, to artisans in Peru of a certain type of stitch. For us, we did a bird's eye jacquard. Which we did in cotton and really fine gauge so that it was lightweight and really easy to wear. So knowing all of these things, kind of knowing who their customer base was, but knowing also technically how to achieve a patterned stitch, which there's multiple ways at multiple kind of like price points. Taking all of those parameters and just realizing like what levers to pull, I was able to do that, and we nailed it in one swatch. So they were able to save so much frustration, time, and money,
Yeah.
um, just by having a person in their corner who was able to kind of see their vision and translate it. Hmm.
Totally. I love that. It's like, you don't know when you don't know, right?
Yeah,
So
totally.
you need, and there's no shame in that. It's just, it's about just finding the right people to collaborate and make it happen. So, okay, so you mentioned also the sustainability part is important for you. It's like a big focus on everything that you do. Can you dive a little deeper? Because we have a lot of people who listen to us who, that is their main focus as well.
Oh, I love that. Yes. I would say these days I'm using the term conscious design more, because it's more inclusive. I really think about like sustainability, of course, in how fibers are being grown or farmed.
Yeah.
And then that whole fiber processing supply chain is really interesting when you think about water use. You think about methane emissions from the animals, like any kind of like bleaching that's happening or chemicals to make the fiber softer. There's so much just in the yarn space.
Mhm.
Um, but I also really think about the artisans that I work with. I prefer to work with artisans over really industrial factories. Of course, they can do both, but I I really like going back to that boot and saddle shop, like that handcraft,
Oh,
those really old school techniques,
yeah.
like just get me out of bed in the morning. And so I want to do all that I can from my position as a designer to design into their skill set.
Yeah.
But I also only want to work with artisan collectives that are paying fair wage or above fair wage.
Yeah.
And also, it's primarily women. And there's so many studies that show that women, whenever they're paid fairly, that so much of that goes back into their community.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's such a massive ripple effect. Um, but it's really important to me too to consider the hands that are making your pieces. And I think even in the conscious space, we think a lot about the hands that are making a piece, but like these people are technicians. Let's
Oh,
also
yeah.
talk about their
Totally.
brains. Like
Yeah.
it is not they're not machines. It's not just
Yeah.
hands. They
Mhm.
are truly
Yeah.
skilled
Hmm.
craftspeople.
Yeah.
And so that's a really important part of the work that I do. And then kind of once I get to know a certain artisan collective, I
Yeah.
will I will work into their skills. And then we kind of work in a way where I'm always pushing to modernize or to like, how can we elevate or push this concept?
Yeah.
But they're rooting me back in like their technical skill set. And then the last kind of thing that I think about in sustainability, um, is the wearer.
Yeah.
So in that's kind of where conscious design becomes maybe a better term because thinking about the fibers that are on our bodies, like
Hmm.
natural fibers are
Hmm.
so much better for our largest organ, which is our skin. And the dyes that we use, I either work with non-toxic dyes,
Yeah.
or when possible, natural dyes or undyed fiber that comes from animals. Like an alpaca, there's 21 or 22 shades that you can get completely undyed. So yeah, nature is amazing, and I think that we're made to be more
Yeah.
in line with that than maybe is the norm right now. So
Yeah.
yeah, those are just all these factors that need to be considered.
I love that. I love that. It just seems logical to me. It's
Yeah.
it's natural, and I love that, these last years we really have moved back into that, and I feel we're gonna keep on going that way, which is exciting to see, all of this, and having leaders like you in those spaces to help people with that as
Yeah.
well. What about from the selling point of view, based on your experience of the brands that you have worked with, that you have helped, what are the things that make a particular collection stand out so it's more
Mhm.
sellable, more appealing? What, in your experience, what works best?
Well, kind of going back to all of those like things like fit and hand feel, I think that
Yeah.
that's so important.
Yes.
Um, And really, I think that rooting your pieces in storytelling is really important for these brands. There's so many small brands that are so intentional
Yeah.
in their process. I think that people like we're made to gravitate towards story. So tell the story. There's also so much greenwashing out there that the folks that are actually doing the work, I'm like, say that you're doing the work,
Yeah.
like put it out there
Yeah.
because those are the brands that like I want to keep going. I want them to keep their lights on, but that only happens, of course, through sales. And then I think another way that companies can be protective is to spend less in development. So whenever you work with an intentional partner, um, you can really minimize waste and development.
Mhm.
That's one of the things that I actually also love about knitwear, not to go on a little rabbit trail, but
No,
um,
go there. We want to
I
hear.
love, okay, great. I love that in knitwear, there's not waste like there is in cut and sew. So if you imagine cutting a shirt out of a roll of fabric, there's going to be pieces that don't fit that shape that then, intentional designers will try to figure out what to do with that waste, but it's an additional process. Where in knitwear, um, because you're creating from yarn, like when you're done knitting that yarn, you just cut off from, right. So there's really no waste because you're just using the yarn that you need whenever you create a swatch. And there's even this thing called waste yarn, which is when you're working on a flatbed machine, um, you need a little bit of yarn to set your tension right to start to create your swatch. So it's like a little half inch of yarn to start. And that waste yarn can actually be reused multiple times. So even the waste is, more sustainable. And then, of course, you can consider what to do with the waste yarn after it's been reused multiple times and it's no longer viable. But having someone who understands how that process works, where you can create swatches that are more likely to succeed, because knitwear is a big experiment. You really are just, you learn all of these levers and all these parameters, but sometimes like
Yeah.
you're doing your best to guide it forward, but that's what makes it really interesting and cool. Um, and when there's a person who understands how to do those things, you can minimize your development cost up front. So then your margins become more favorable. So even if you're selling less, you can have it positioned in such a way that it's, working to serve your brand.
Exactly. No, that makes so much sense. And another area that people really need guidance in, because, like you said, if we don't make any sales, how can we keep on going? And a
Mhm.
lot of people they go through so much struggle with that. So, do you provide that kind of assistance? I know I wanted to ask you, you have a program called the Fully Fashion Program. What does that program include, and how do you help people through the program?
Yeah, so the Fully Fashion program, Um, first off, is a play on fully fashioned knitwear, which is knitwear that is created fully to the shape. So it's like instead of cutting an armhole,
Mhm.
you're adding and reducing stitches to get that curve, which is again part of that waist minimizing exercise.
Yeah.
But the Fully Fashion program is a 6-month creative and technical partnership where I guide brands from that initial concept all the way to PO, placing their PO order.
Okay.
So I support with that design through development process and then get them set up so that they have product that then they can proceed to production on. Um, so that starts with like a brand audit, and then aligning on their vision, understanding if they have a factory partner, if they need help with like matchmaking for a factory partner, understanding their SKU strategy, of course, all this the sourcing of yarns and then putting that into a stitch, kind of going through that stitch experimenting part of the process, which is called knitting a knit down.
Okay.
That's what the swatch is called, is a knit down. And then funneling that into tech packs and then supporting them through the various sampling stages. So proto, SMS, through virtual fittings. I'm a very proactive collaborator. So like I will also speak to the factory on your behalf. And that's where I can come in with that kind of like knitwear language and like just expedite things or avoid a lot of pitfalls. I was an in-house designer. And so I do know what it is like to be working for a brand, translating their vision. And so this program is built out to support someone in that position or a founder, so that they can create production ready samples.
Awesome. And how can people get in touch with you with that? What's your website, or where can they find this info?
Yeah. So I have my website, which is meredithnoles.com. And Knowles is spelled with an N, not like Beyonce, I wish. And then, so there's meredithnoles.com. And then I'm very active on LinkedIn, also just Meredith Noles. And I actually have a newsletter called The Nitty Gritty. And
I
that's a
love it.
place where that's a place where people can sign up, and I just provide a lot of education there. And a lot of businesses have found that to be really supportive, even if they're not able to come on for the Fully Fashion program.
Yeah.
But also to note that the Fully Fashion program opens up only twice a year. So I open up slots there twice a year so that it aligns with the wholesale calendar.
Okay.
Um, we have to design a year in advance. That is just the time that it takes for knitwear, which runs at its own speed, and then for ethical design where it is fair, for the workers. So yeah, it's for brands that are definitely forward thinking, and we design a year in advance, and it opens up in January and in typically in like July,
Okay.
to align with the knitwear calendar or the wholesale calendar.
Awesome. And for now, you guys can sign up to her newsletter, which we're gonna
Yeah.
leave the links below so you can start learning more and learning more from her. So before, well, two things. First, I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you, because I always like to ask all my entrepreneurs, what are two lessons that you have really learned through this entrepreneurial journey that you think others would benefit from and would help them in their businesses? You want to share?
Yes. So I think that structure is everything.
Uh-huh.
Like structure creates creative freedom. So I have a lot of structure to my days so that I can also block out creative time. But this is also a thing that I'm always telling the brands that I'm working with. Like, we need to know the structure of how designing a season works. Like, there are certain steps.
Yeah.
Um, so that we can create space to truly do creative work.
Yeah.
So structure is everything. And then um, aligned partners create momentum. So I think whenever you are working with people who are on your wavelength, who just like you want to do better and be better, you guys are at the same time bettering each other and actually pushing the needle forward. So it is worth it to seek out folks who are aligned with your mission and with your ethos.
Totally. Plus, if you're going in circles, how long do you want to be going in those circles,
Right.
right? It's like, yeah, it's just part of it. Um, this is awesome. I loved everything that you have shared. Is there anything else that you want to tell the audience? Anything you have coming up, or anything you want to share?
Well, actually, I just realized, so I have recently launched what I call strategy calls, which is a 60-minute session where I partner with brands who just maybe are in a spot where they can't work with me for 6 months, but they're having a bit of a dumpster fire with their knitwear and they just need a sounding board. I've also worked with founders there just who kind of want to, just have someone to educate them on different fibers, or
Yeah.
why is sampling this challenging, or what do these knitwear terms mean? That's an additional way that I can support brands who maybe aren't ready for that full funnel support. But I would say that the Nitty Gritty newsletter is probably my most helpful space.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, well, Thank you so much, Meredith, for being here today and for sharing your expertise. Guys, I'm going to leave all her information below. If you have any questions, just, contact her. She said she's very active on LinkedIn, and we're going to leave all the links, or you can just write in the comments in the podcast and we'll get it to her so she can help you out. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you guys for joining us for this podcast episode. And yeah, just have an amazing rest of your day. And we will see you guys in the next episode. Okay? Bye, guys. Hey guys, thank you for watching this video. I just wanted to let you know that the membership is now open. So if you need support growing your brand, getting it visible, establishing it, and getting consistent sales, please take a look at the membership. In there, you can get support every day for a very affordable price. I answer your questions. I give you content, motivation, and different things to help you along the way. So if you're interested, I'm going to leave a link below. Let me know if you have any questions, okay? Bye, guys.